Hey, what's up, folks? This is Pastor Charles Humphrey of Hope's House Christian Ministries. I'd like to welcome you to our Men's VIP Conversation. The VIP Conversation is a space where men are injecting men, and even women, with a dose of vision, inspiration, and purpose. Why, you ask? Well, the reason is simple. I know you have a big God-sized dream, a big God-sized vision, things you want to accomplish so you can impact the world around you. I also know that you have big opposition, big obstacles, big challenges ahead of you as you pursue those dreams. So we created this space to help you overcome the effects of procrastination, stagnation, and even intimidation of accomplishing that dream that's right before you, that's in your sight. So listen, we've assembled some great people, some great men who have experiences, backgrounds, and challenges they've overcame to pursue their dream as well. So I want you to pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and lean in and listen to these men as they share their vision, inspiration, and purpose with you. Let's get to it. I have an amazing guest today, and he is a Grammy Emmy, Oscar.
Right. I'll take them. Just keep them coming. Keep them coming. Golden Globe, Emmy, Tony, all of it. Whatever you say, I'll receive that. Even if this is vision, right? This is vision. Yeah, so whatever you're saying is part of the vision anyway, right?
But he's a Grammy-nominated artist. I'm gonna let him tell you why that is. But his name is Sekou Andrews, and I want him to explain to you what the poetic voice is all about. Okay, so Sekou, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Pastor Chuck. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm ready, man. So listen, we could talk all day and night about all the great accomplishments you have. But I want you, if you can, for those who don't know who you are yet, right? Give us a nutshell on the man, the myth, the legend they call Sekou Andrews.
The man, the myth, the legend is full-time spoken word poet, ex fifth grade elementary school teacher, turned actor and musician and recording artist and spoken word poet. I'm actually in my 19th year. I'm actually preparing for how I'm going to celebrate my 20th anniversary as a full-time spoken word poet next year. So I'm excited about that. And then along that journey, I recognize that a big part of my purpose and my mission is to help to create a more commercially viable industry for the art form of spoken word poetry. So, young poets coming up who want to be spoken word poets for a living can actually achieve that. And so part of that journey included me creating a new category of public speaking called poetic voice. Yes. Poetic voice is basically defined as the seamless blend of inspirational speaking and spoken word poetry. So if you think Hamilton meets TED Talks, that's sort of like spoken word poetry, right? It's like 1 minute it's moving seamlessly between the inspirational content, the business content, the storytelling, the spoken word, the theater, the comedy, all in one seamless experience. Wow. And so, that poetic voice has been what I built my company on, a communications and training and entertainment company based in spoken word poetry. And we've done albums. We've won, got nominated for Grammys. We're working on film projects now. We got a TV project coming up. So, just continuing to push spoken word into mainstream media in all ways possible.
Well, okay then. If they didn't know, now they know. You had a couple of points that I personally made the mistake of. Yeah, he's a rapper. He's a poet. It's not as simple as that. And thank you for explaining the poetic voice and the desire to move that forward. So you actually answered like 5 of my questions already in one.
Done. Good night.
Wrap it up. Well, I do want to have you elaborate a little bit, because you told me, and I one of my end questions is, what's the big vision, the big picture? And you kind of said that, which you told me a while back. You said, I want to make this thing mainstream. And then one of your pieces on your album with String Theory, amazing album, you talked about, the image I got was, they're not celebrating poetry in Madison Square Garden with sellout crowds, and things like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you kind of run that back a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, spoken word poetry has been relegated to the local neighborhood open mic for years.
Right.
That's what the mass perception of the art form is.
Right.
And that's not inaccurate. That is, I mean, all of us came from the local neighborhood open mic. Like, we all give love and respect and honor to the local neighborhood open mic, because that was our stage, our platform, where it is that we found our voice. But I've always thought it was a shame that the furthest it goes, you know, once a poet discovers that art form, in the same way that a comedian can discover the local comedy club, and a dancer can discover dance on the local platform, and an actor, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's a trajectory, right? And they can, and if a young actor or a comedian says to their parent, I want to be an actor or a comedian when I grow up, maybe that parent is not in support of creativity. Maybe they're like, no, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor. But even if that's the case, they at least have an understanding of the trajectory of where an actor or a poet can go. They know that they can sell out stadiums like Kevin Hart. They know that they can do TV shows and movies, right? They know that. So they recognize that there is a career there. Let a kid tell their parent they want to be a spoken word poet when they grow up, you know, like that's like a death sentence. All the parent is going to hear is, oh, so you want to be homeless is what you're saying. Right? And so, like, there's no concept of what that actually can be. And I've just always felt that was a shame. And typically that trajectory, you know, you move from that neighborhood open mic, you start doing, you start touring, maybe you're selling your merchandise and your products at local shows, national shows, maybe international shows. Maybe you start doing colleges, the checks get a little bigger. You start getting a little bit more guaranteed income. And then that's kind of it. You know, then a lot of times folks leave the stage. Maybe they take their spoken word skills and they go write for an HBO show or a television show. Maybe they take their skills and they go release books, they teach, they do something else, but they feel like this is as far as this art form can go. And I just felt like that's a shame. We need to be able to monetize this art form and its beauty and its purity and its power in a lot more ways. And that's why I started kicking open doors in the business world with Poetic Voice. That's why I started kicking open doors with the you know, the Grammy nomination, the music world, and now TV and film, like just bringing the true art form of spoken word, the version that we all know and fell in love with, not that watered down, sterilized version that you get in mass media where everybody's just snapping and there's incense and there's an actor playing a poet. No, that raw beauty that we bring to the stage, that real, I want that to go as far as it can go, so that young poets can make a purposeful and a profitable living off their art.
I love it. I love it. I love it. The vision is just bursting through the screen on me. And so I'm thinking, I've seen a lot of rappers transition, Ice-T, Latifah, Ice Cube, all those guys, and I assume they learn to act, you know, and do other things. And then also for those, and you actually you're a very dynamic individual in general, very creative, even when you talk and share. It's like, okay, my little linear engineering mind will be like, okay, whatever you said, you know. But it seems like you have some of those elements as a person. And I'm not saying every person that does poetry has those gifts, but I think there's more in the tank, as it were. It's a matter of harnessing those things. Because I don't want you to go back to the school classroom and educate. I mean, education is great, but I think there's more in you than that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, to me, I always knew that I was just destined for a bigger classroom, you know, like even with my speaker training system, I never wanted to be a speaker trainer. But the educator in me got tired of hearing the words, how do you do that? And not really having an answer. And I started to realize I wasn't really serving my community fully, right? And so it was like, okay, I need to not just inspire people. Yes, a big part of my legacy that I want to leave is a legacy of inspiration. Big part of my purpose on this planet is to inspire people and to teach people how to be inspired. And I realized I wasn't doing that second part.
Wow.
You know, and so it was like, yeah, I can inspire you, but my impact on this world is greater if I inspire you and then teach you how to be inspiring to your community and create that ripple effect. And people have a disconnect with their voice. They have a disconnect with their ability to be inspiring. They look at inspiration as something that is reserved for the the Pastor Chucks and the Pastor Dre's and Ray's out there, and
Thank you.
the MLKs and the Gandhi. They view inspiration as this thing that, I just sit back when I'm at church service, or I'm at a stadium show, and and I get inspired. They do that really great, but I don't know how to do that. I'm just regular. I'm just ordinary. I don't have some big story, and people diminish themselves and realize and forget that someone or in their periphery can absolutely be inspired by them to go and do great things, but they have to harness that power. And you can harness that power in your communication, whether you want to be a public speaker, paid public speaker, or whether you just want to be a good parent or a good dentist or a good, lawyer or whatever your profession is, but believing that you can be inspiring. And so the educator in me just moved from a 5th grade classroom to a more global classroom so that I can start teaching people dynamic communication. My speaker training programs, my online courses, my one-on-one trainings, all of that was basically trying to increase the impact that I can make on this world through others.
Wow, well said, well said. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this platform myself. One is actually inspires me, so that's my free gift to myself. But also, there's layers in not just you, but the other guys we've talked to that are inspiring on different levels in different spaces and in different times. And so I love that aspect of it. And we're going to drop you a link and stuff in your contact information there so folks can access you in this broadcast and say, hey, I want to find out more about this class or this process I can use to change my everyday, normal, mundane seeming story to me to something that does inspire someone. And you have a song that talks about being voiceful. Is that what you're talking about? Just using that skill set? Yeah,
absolutely. Finding your voice, and just I just sort of coined that term, be voiceful, just in the same way that people are focusing on mindfulness and people are focusing on just like using those other aspects of themselves, harnessing the power of those aspects, harnessing the power of your mind and your mental clarity and so forth, your physicality, your spirituality, your emotions, but also making sure that you're harnessing the power of your voice, because your voice is the outward expression of all of those things, the outward expression of you. And a lot of people have not found their voice in their life, and it feels, the analogy I use is it feels like something's lodged in your throat. We've all had that. We get a little piece of spit or food or something lodged in our throat, and it's just like we can barely talk. You can't get out what you're saying without something, and it just feels like you're stifled.
Yeah.
You're silenced by it. And when you clear it, it's the most amazing feeling, right? You're like, okay, I can breathe again. I can speak again. I can appear and sound like myself again. This is who I can represent myself as who I truly am. And so, I'm always encouraging people, like, clear your throat. You got something to say. Clear the smoke, clear the darkness, clear the way, clear the path to your potential, scale the peaks of your fears, and then bellow from the summit for the whole world to hear until porcelain tile mountains repeat you loud and clear. I sound amazing out here. Like that. That is what you want to have when you clear your throat,
Okay, let me write that down, okay?
Right. Did you get that? If not, cop the album, Sekou Andrews and the String Theory. Boom! Plug.
and so, speaking of string theory, oh my gosh, tell me about the project, because one, nominated for an award, and I think you were up against some girl in Michelle Obama, I think.
Yeah, a little local, small act. You might have heard of
girl. Yeah. And I absolutely love the orchestration, man, top-notch stuff. So tell me about how that came together, and for those who don't know what string theory is and who string theory is, and how did you get together? Because I know some cats who can play guitar around the corner, but I didn't know you knew them.
Oh man, it was a beautiful divine orchestration. A colleague of mine who's part of the group, I know him from a business group. He hit me up early 2019 and said, I'm a member of this group called the String Theory. We're a 50-person neoclassical symphony orchestra from Europe, based in Sweden and Berlin, and we're creating this sort of Los Angeles chapter of the orchestra as well. And to celebrate the Los Angeles chapter, we are bringing all of the the Los Angeles folks, but all the European folks as well in. We're renting this sound stage. We're going to put ourselves in a big circle, And over the course of 4 days, we're inviting 12 or 13, 14 artists in to record a song top to bottom, create and record a song in, I think it was a 3-hour or 4-hour slot. So literally we will meet them. We will talk about what we're going to record. We will write it. We will orchestrate it. We will get the sheet music. We will record it 4 hours tops. I think it might've been 3 hours, and then done, take a break, on to the next artist. And in 4 days, we will have an album.
No pressure.
Do you want in?
No pressure.
Right. And I was like, wow, that sounds like that could be disastrous or amazing. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? It was like, sounds crazy, but, you know, decided to go ahead and do it. And, you know, made those plans. Like the story I tell, just to sort of really show you the power of showing up, right? Like sometimes you just have to show up. You have to be accountable. You have to keep your commitments. You have to show up in life, despite everything that's against you. And sometimes you make these commitments in advance. And for me, I agreed to do it, let's say February. I then took off for one of the most insane March travel schedules I had ever had. I was flying, you know, speaking city to city. I got home at the end of this exasperating speaking schedule, flew home the next day. That was like a Wednesday night. The next day I had my my company quarterly strategic meeting. So just an all hands meeting, all day meeting, talking about all of our projections and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then finished that. Normally I'm exhausted from that and I shut down, but I actually had to deliver a client piece that next day on Friday. And so I had to coffee it up, write all night. I'm struggling through this writing and I don't feel like I'm ready to deliver this client piece, but I have to get up early, you know, go to bed at 2 a.m, wake up at 5 a.m, and then started writing at 5 a.m, walked into my office, discovered that my cat of 20 years was dead.
Oh my gosh.
So now I got to stop my writing. I got to go. I'm mourning my cat. I'm all sad. That was my homie, 20 years. That was my dog. You know, my cat was my dog, you know? and so I got to go to the vet and confirm the death and, you know, package her up and figure all that out. Then go back, get on the call with the client, read them the piece. Then after all of that, get dressed for this thing that now I hate that I committed to. And now I have to go and show up for this orchestra that same day that my cat died, right after all of this. So I'm just feeling miserable. I'm unprepared. I haven't had a chance to think about the poem or any of that. But I was like, all right, you committed to it, show up. Wow. So I went there, went into LA and showed up. They were like, hey, here's the composer and the conductor. He was like, hey, so I have a couple of tracks that I can kind of play you that I was sort of thinking about, and a couple of compositions. And I was like, yeah, I have a couple of poems I can think about. I can, you know, that I've been thinking about that I can show you. And he was like, great, why don't I play one of the, you know, there's one track that I'm really thinking might be it, but I'll play it for you. And then I was like, yeah, there's one poem that I actually have that is about symphony orchestra. So I'm thinking that might be it, but you know, there's others. So he played me sort of just a rough composition of the track on his computer. And I was like, oh my God, that's not only amazing, but I think that might be amazing for the poem. That's my top pick. And then I read him the orchestration, you know, the orchestra poem, and he was like, oh my God, like that's where everybody was like giddy and like, this is amazing.
Serious?
So he was like, great. So he prints it. He's printing the sheet music, getting everything all did. He gives it to the symphony orchestra. They're practicing, they're rehearsing. I'm over there. I hadn't even really finished the poem. Like I had written this piece, you know, a couple of years before, so I never quite like signed off on it. So now I'm like, while they're rehearsing, I'm trying to finish do I want this word or that word, and what's the right thing? And then we broke it up and we arranged it. Then we rehearsed it for about 3-4 times. Then we recorded it 3-4 times, and then we were done. And that, and it ended up afterwards. It was such a powerful experience. People were crying afterwards. They were just like, this was our favorite session of the experience. And that ended up being the track Good Vibes off of the album.
Okay.
And from that, I went to them and I was working with the brand manager at the time. And we both went to them and said, let's do an album together. If you guys are down, like this is such an amazing experience. And they were like, word. So we ended up doing the album. Now I was already working on an album because I had set my sights on the Grammys. So I was trying to break this tradition of spoken word poets never winning the Grammy for best spoken word album. Hadn't happened in 30 years. And I was like, that's a shame. I'm going to set my sights on the Grammys and I'm going to try to change that with a different album. But then when this album fell into my lap, I was like, okay, this is a Grammy caliber album too. Let me push that other album aside, work on this. And that began the pursuit for the Grammy.
Wow. man, the power of showing up.
Yeah.
Ready or not, here I come. Listen,
Yeah.
here I am.
Right. Like imagine, I mean, I had every excuse in the world to not show up. I could have been like, yo, I'm burnt out. I got this client. I got this deadline. And my cat just died. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I had every excuse to pull out. And I wasn't even prepared. Also, I didn't feel like I was showing up as my best self, but I still just showed up and I allowed the raw emotions to come out of me. And it made for an amazing experience that then led to a life-changing award and recognition,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, those who are listening, if you don't take nothing else from this conversation, I'm a big fan of showing up. That's about being just faithful to your words, being responsible, just being in there. Because sometimes we just don't show up. We miss out on what God has for us.
Yeah. And I'll temper that by saying, the counter to that is that, we have to know how to take care of ourselves, right? Sure, and our mental health is important. And so we look at situations like Simone Biles or Osaka, just, these situations where people had to sit back and say, okay, I have been being brutal to myself. And I also have to know when to say no, and I have to know when to stop. And that's real also. So you have to, as an entrepreneur, as a hustler, as a person with ambition that's climbing the ladder, like you have to balance. There are times for both. And I always make sure that, because sometimes in this entrepreneurial life, we brutalize ourselves and it's always just show up and do and push. And we have a heart attack at 40, or we break down and have mental, depression and suicide at 30 or whatever. So we definitely have to know when to say no, but we also have to make sure that we're not just being frivolous with our commitments and that we're making sure that we honor what we said we do. And that we sometimes recognize that we don't know what will come of something, and the thing that God has in store for us is not necessarily the thing that we thought was going to come from that. So I think it's the balance of both,
Yeah. Well, speaking of balance, I want to ask you a real big question after this about your daughter, but in the midst of all we talk about your daughter all night long,
all day.
But before that, you mentioned balance, mental health, which is huge. And I've heard entrepreneurs all on YouTube, you got to grind, stay up all night, get up early, stay up late, all that stuff. And I understand that part because there's seasons for that. So you just go hard in the paint, What keeps you balanced in the midst of all because you have things pull at you, your own boss, you kind of, you set your own schedule, but you got to sing for your supper in a sense, you have to. How do you keep balancing? What is it? Family? Is it faith? Is it the kid? Is it sanity? What keeps you on that level playing in the midst of it all? What do you go back to?
It's definitely not one thing.
Right. Okay.
But it is. But if I had to find the thread in all of it, the one thread that connects all of it, it's about being intentional. It's about being intentional with, with your time, with your output, and paying attention to what it is that you need, right? So I'll give you an example. This is just because it's timely right now. I'm in a unique season of my career. Never before have I ever done this, but I just put a freeze on all my bookings for 6 months.
6 months?
6 months, right. I had this, when I told my team and told my company, there was the same audible gasp that you have, especially considering that we're just coming out of a pandemic and I'm in the live events business, right? My whole business was based off of being in person. In person got shut down, hundreds of thousands of dollars flying off of our calendar over the course of 3 weeks in 2020. Like it was terrifying. And we had to do a pivot and we had to work on, trying to figure out, how to put other things in place and go virtual and all of that. Same thing that most of the world was doing that was affected by this. And we did a great job at it and we survived and we ended up thriving afterwards and so forth. And then I looked up and said, at the end of it, we had a crazy first quarter and we had a fourth quarter that was looking like it was going to be pretty booked of this year, starting in October. And so I looked up and I said, you know what? I've been going nonstop for 2.5 years because starting with that string theory experience I just talked about in 2019, I'd had a busy spring and Q1 before that, traveling and speaking, then the string theory song, then the string theory album, then all of a sudden the Grammy campaigns, then we got the Grammy nomination, and I'm campaigning all the way through the holidays into the beginning of the year. Then I took off literally the day after the Grammys. I went straight from the Grammys to the airport and took off that next day and for a whole bunch of speaking. Then all of a sudden the world got sick and caught a pandemic and shut down. Then I'm scrambling to keep my business afloat, and how do we trim expenses, and how do we make sure that we pivot and like all throw away these plans and focus on this. So and then we had an amazing last quarter, and then that bled into the first quarter and second quarter of this year. So I looked up and I was like, I've been going nonstop for 2.5 years. That's not healthy. And part of what keeps me busy is talking to these other companies about balance and about well-being and about all that, right? And so you got to recognize when you need to turn your superpowers on yourself, you know, point your own powers at yourself and keep yourself accountable. And so I did that, and I decided that I was going to trust in the season that the quarter that we just had. Great bookings, made a lot of our money back. The quarter that was coming up at the end of this year, feeling like we were going to be solid in our bookings, and say, okay, for Q2 and Q3, I'm going to put a freeze. We already have some bookings, and I'm going to keep those obligations, but I'm going to put a freeze. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to focus inward. And so I ended up, because I'm a poet, I got to name things and come up with themes. So I ended up calling it our CPR season.
Okay.
Right? And the CPR season is basically, obviously there's the metaphor of CPR, right? Breathing life back into something, resuscitating something, right? Bringing something back to life. And I felt like we needed to do that to ourselves in a lot of healthy and holistic ways. But it also stands for completion, protection, and restoration. And the completion part of it was basically just saying there's so many projects. When you're scrambling, you're constantly chasing the carrot, the latest carrot. There's so many projects that you start and don't finish. Right, and that's really bad for your sense of job satisfaction, to constantly just have in front of you a bunch of things that are 20%, 60%, 89% finished, and you still can't check it off your list after 2.5 years. So I was like, that's unhealthy. We're just going to focus on not taking any other project, not taking any other gigs, but just crossing things off our list and getting some of these projects completed. And then the protection part of it was just us focusing on just, our IP protection and our human resources and our contracts, legal, just making sure that we were fortified for the next stage of our company and our growth. And then the restoration obviously is just really focusing on just time. I just had my first child, so I wanted to make sure that I was continuing to have time with my family. I wanted to give myself permission to, right? So taking time with my family where I wasn't guilty about it, where I wasn't feeling like, oh, I'm just away from work and I'm supposed to be somewhere else, and allowing myself to say, no, I'm supposed to be here. I have been pre-authorized by my boss in my head to say, this is where you're supposed to be at this time. And so enjoy it. And being able to do that and get rest and catch up with family and catch up on, I just leisure and all those kinds of things to just feel restored, so that when I come into this fourth quarter and I hit the grind again, and I'm traveling and I'm speaking and I'm back on the grind, I'm restored. Yeah. Our company is protected, and we've completed things. We've cleared our plate. And so now we can start looking at what it is that we want to do with next year from a very intentional place, as opposed to another year of scrambling to pick up on things, Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No, and be a healthy place, right? A healthy place.
Right. So that's just an example of a very huge, scary, but intentional way that I decided to create personal balance and balance for my team and for my company. And it was risk, right? It came with sacrifice. If I'm wrong, right? And if we don't have bookings and we don't have a great Q4, then all of a sudden I'm back in a financially compromised situation. So it was a big gamble, but I've made those kinds of big gambles on myself and my team, my company in the past, and they've paid off. And so I'm comfortable with high risk and failing forward and really making sure that you seize those opportunities when you have them.
Amen. It is a temptation to not step back and take time, because you think you got to keep on moving forward, but in so doing, you're compromising your health. And it's like the basketball player who's playing on a bum knee or a bum Achilles. It's like, you're gonna get worse, bro. You have to take time to get better. So you mentioned your daughter, Zolani.
Zolani.
And I want you to introduce us to her. And you have a whole story. I don't have a whole lot of time, but listen, in the midst of all your accomplishing, this is a backstory that most folks don't know about. I know you've been public about it on social media with you and the wife and the challenge you had with fertility, things like that. So how do you wrap all the aspirations with the life challenges behind the scene that I'm sure toward your heart, towards your wife's heart, over a period of time? And I forget the span. I know it's a long journey for both of y'all. So but give us a little taste of that dynamic.
Yeah, it was my wife and I just had our 9th wedding anniversary this past week. And a year after we got married, we started trying to have a child, and thought, boom, 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 it'd be nice and easy. Both of us are healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And then began basically a 7-year journey. And we had four losses along the way. So it was a very painful journey. And finally, after 7 years of trying, we, finally had our little miracle baby. She just celebrated her first birthday this past Sunday, August 8th. And we had Zolani. And she is just our light. Like she's the thing in the middle of people having their worst year ever with 2020. She's the thing that made 2020 the best year ever for us.
Crazy.
And it was something that I was again very intentional about being vocal about during the journey, because I am a voice and I'm a storyteller, and I didn't want to just tell the after story. I needed to tell the before story and the during story. And I found that when I always talk about humanizing your language, right? I teach leaders, I teach communicators, especially high-level salespeople, high-level executives, CEOs, VPs. They dehumanize their language in a way. They speak to people like they speak to their team members or their investors or their customers like their corporate bullet points. Right. And they're used to delivering information and not inspiration. And I'm always talking to them about, humanizing your language, humanizing your connection with your audience. And storytelling is a powerful way to do that. And so I, as a storyteller, told the story of our fertility journey along the way on massive stages in front of major, global corporations and organizations that had nothing to do with fertility. I would put it in the context of resilience and falling and getting back up, or I put it in the context of connecting with people in a personal way and creating intimacy with your customers. And I would tell them this story, and they would just be like, this is crazy. Like, how did you have me crying at 8 a.m. at a tech conference and you're talking about your fertility journey? And at first I was like, where are you going with this? Why are you talking to us about fertility when we're cybersecurity or we're healthcare or we're something? But then something switched, and I stopped thinking about you and your wife and your baby, and I started thinking about me and my wife and my baby. Or I started thinking about my grandmother who just, got her cancer diagnosis. Or I started thinking about my husband, or I started thinking about my son or my brother and this situation that happened with them. And that's the power of poetry. That's the power of story. People find themselves in you when you open that access point through a story. So people begin to find themselves in my story. And then once I had them and we were all in the same space together through our collective respective experiences, then I connected back to their industry. And I go, okay, now this is how it connects to you in pharma. This is how it connects to you in technology, how it connects to you in cybersecurity. And this is what you can do for your customers when you're making that sale. And then their minds are blown. They're going, oh, I never thought that I could bring in my personal experience in business. I was always taught to separate it, but that's not the way anymore. The way is to find that fusion and to humanize and personalize your business to create empathy and foster deeper relationships and connections with folks. And so I was very vocal about it. And I'll just finish with this. It also was very cathartic for me.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. Because then I had people that were connecting to my story, that were rooting for me, that were praying for me. I had this one experience, and I'm going to tell you this and then I'm going to stop because I know this is time. But I had this, but you'll appreciate this. I had this one experience where I was the keynote speaker for the National Speakers Association, right? 1,500 of my peers, best speakers in the world. NSA, yeah.
Right. Oh, you're big time. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was the closing keynote speaker for NSA, and it's my first time being there, and I'm in the hallway, and this woman big blonde hair, like almost that stereotypical Dallas look, big blonde Texas hair, and she comes up with something asking, and she's just like, wow, this is nice. Things are really y'all got it together. And she was like, hey, sweetie, how are you? What's your name? And I got to talking with her and we're sharing stories and telling her, I'm trying to have a baby and my blah, blah. And she's talking about her kids. Then these guys come over and they're friends with her and they start talking to her and she's chopping, hey, this is Sekou, this is blah, 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 blah. And then 5 minutes later, she goes, okay, now y'all get out of here. I got to do something with him. And I was like thinking to myself, you got to do something with me. What are you talking? I just met you. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? And then they're like, ha, 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 ha. And they keep talking and keep talking. Another 5 minutes, she goes, serious, y'all go. I need time with him. And I was like, they were like, oh, okay. Well, see you later. I was like, yeah, good to meet you. And I don't know what's going on. And then she literally, all right, yeah, I'll see you later. And she turns around to me and she goes, okay, come on, let's pray for this baby. Jesus. And I mean, we stood there in the middle. She didn't ask me my face. She didn't ask me permission. She grabbed my hands. We were standing in the middle of the lobby, hundreds of people walking past us, and we just eyes closed, hands down, and she just starts praying for my baby. It wasn't because I asked her to, right? That was her gift for me. She was like, whatever your faith is, this is going to be my gift to you. Yes. This is something that I need to do, the energy that I need to bring to you and so forth. And I just felt that was so powerful and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't being open with my story, right?
Wow, man. You messing me up, man. First of all, I need to sign for your class, for real, for real. And then, but all the steps in between, so powerful. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm hoping people appreciate what you're sharing because you're dropping some real knowledge just in your life journey. And we can glean. And here's my thing, whatever, like you said, whatever business they're in, trying to be an actor, a singer, dancer, movie producer, this stuff applies. It's transferable across the board. So,
absolutely.
Wow. I don't know if I ask you another question, we're going to talk for 10 more minutes, man. Amazing connection. And Solani's doing great. Wife is doing great and everything.
Yeah. And everybody's amazing. She's the light for sure.
Yeah, I've seen her, man. She is gorgeous. She's beautiful. A dream baby. You guys, man, I congratulate you. I honor you for your journey and for your perseverance, because I know there's times, and you've shared a couple of things with me along the way. It's hard to keep on trying. And most folks, after a couple of shots, like, okay, I'm done with this. We just gonna be, but God,
it's painful. Yeah, it's painful.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's a real story. You kind of talked about big dreams, visions to pull others, to expand the realm of poetic voice, to bring others along, create platforms and pathways for them. Any other big dreams you have as you want to let people know what's out there, what's there, what is there, if you ever get there?
Yeah. I got a lot of big dreams, right? And I think that's the challenge of visionaries, is, the follow through. That's the challenge of hustlers and ambitious people. That's the challenge of artists and creatives, especially, right? Artists and creatives can be terrible at the follow through. We're idea folks. We got an idea a week. You know what I mean? And they're all amazing. And half the time they are all amazing and they're amazing. They would be great and so forth. But without the action and the follow through and the commitment, it becomes lost. So and I can be like that as well. And so I'm filled with big visions and big dreams. A lot of them are centered around, like you said, going back to that purpose of just helping to create a more commercially viable industry for spoken word. We just don't have enough of an industry, and that's why poets aren't able to reach the heights that we should be able to reach. And so there's that. There's just also, just the legacy of inspiration. Like, I want to inspire as many people as possible, and I want to teach people how to be inspiring and inspired. The book that I'm working on is about the power of inspiration, and it's just that. It's how to be inspiring. It's how to be inspired. It's how to create access to the power of inspiration for you in your life, with your family, with your job, with your career, with your, whatever it is. And so I've been working on that book for a while. Pray for me. I swear I always have to say working in air quotes, because I feel like I've been working on the book bit by bit for years. But I'm making progress on it, and I'm chipping away at it. I'm excited about it coming out, and because it really will be a transfer of knowledge of answering that question, how do you do that, even more. And then, just kicking open more doors. You know, like I said, I want to bring spoken word to film in some creative ways. I want to see spoken word in television in creative ways. I want to get that Grammy. I want my next album to be the Grammy winning album, you know, but also, you know, so that for the purpose of having record labels, like the purpose of the Grammy, like people are, how did the Grammy change your life? Grammy wasn't necessarily life changing. The nomination wasn't life changing for me. I mean, part of that was because the pandemic hit right after I got nominated. So all plans for world tours got canceled, you know. But the big life-changing aspect of it for me was just all the poets that hit me up afterwards, like, yo, like, I didn't believe that was possible. Thank you for bringing that within our scope. And now there's a whole movement that I'm not even spearheading, but I'm involved in that is about us separating the category and from audiobooks so that poets can begin to submit for the Grammy and win the Grammy a lot more. And folks didn't believe that was even possible before this past nomination. So that's the real life-changing part of it. It's not my life, but it's changing other people's lives. And I just want to continue to do that in more and more ways through my art form and through the power of inspiration.
Wow. Well, listen, I got a whole earful today of inspiration for myself. And I believe that those who've been listening got the same thing, man. Thank you so much for sharing your accomplishments, but more than that, sharing your story with us so we can learn ourselves to be voiceful. So listen, guys, as you're watching this broadcast, Sekou's information is below, his website, contact information. So hit him up, please. I think we all need to. It's funny, we just rebranded our church, and part of our tagline is "Tell a Better Story." You know, or tell a better story. Something like that. I'm trying to.
We're still locking it in. We're still locking it in.
I am, because it's all new. But we do want to. We all have a story to tell. And we're all going to be in different spaces. And for us to spread the light of God's love, God's life in this world around us, which is getting crazier and crazier, we have to be able to powerfully tell those stories because people relate. But the woman with the big hair in Dallas, she related to you, man. Never met her, probably never seen her since.
That's right.
But she connected, and we want to connect people to some greater things that are yet ahead of them. So, man, thank you so much for everything. Stay tuned, folks, for more of our VIP conversations where you can get vision, inspiration, and a sense of purpose by just listening to others as they're doing the same thing. So with that said, we're going to close this one out for now, and we'll see you all soon in the future for our next VIP conversation. God bless.
God bless. Thank you, bro.
Hey, folks, listen, we want to thank you for joining us for this week's conversation. And remember, above all things, you don't have to be a celebrity to be a VIP. All you need to do is have a vision, inspire someone, and walk in God-given purpose. And don't forget to share this video with someone and drop us a note or message to let us know how this video was helpful for you. And we will see you soon.